Well, it's quite a bit to unpack. Iran and Israel, right? Let's see. The Israel and Iran conflict is a multidimensional, struggle. It's involving so many things: military, intelligence, and so many other dynamics. But then, when you look at it, it's quite a structured analysis of the conflict, of 2025. Now, we want to know what are the root causes of these. There are so many. We can say it's also ideological rivalry. Well, as you know, Iran's Islamic Republic does not recognize the legitimacy of Israel, calling it a Zionist regime. So that must be removed. And Israel sees Iran as its most, threat. They are so threatened by it. And the other issue where other journalists and political analysis, they are saying it's dealing, and I think lots of us will agree with this, with nuclear issues. Israel opposes Iran's nuclear ambitions, believing Iran is seeking a nuclear weapon despite Iran's claim of, they have peaceful intent. So a lot of us questions that because we do know that Iran is known for its when it comes to nuclear weapons and manufacturing, and they're quite sharp with that. And then something else which plays such an important role and points to consider. We look at the regional dominance when you're looking at, they want to take over. Well, if you look at it, both nations seek influence across the Middle East, especially in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and other surrounding areas. Well, the current situation, military and the proxy fronts. Syria, Israel regularly conducts airstrikes on Iranian weapons depots. If you think about it, earlier on today, it's like ongoing. If you're following the news, it's like you can't keep count of it, And so Syria was targeted, to prevent the arms from reaching Hezbollah. Lebanon, Hezbollah, Iran's ally, has missed an estimated 150,000 plus rockets aimed at Israel, the border. It clashes, the clashes intensify. And at a moment you think Iran was just sleeping and very quiet, and now overnight they are so active. And then you look at Gaza. I mean, we all are aware of what's happening. And are we trying to shift the focus away from that there? Because Iran funds and arms Hamas. Now we go back to Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic, the jihad contributing to the rocket attacks on Israel. And then if you look at it, it's all the Islamic countries around which are involved, Iraq and Yemen. Iran backed by militants, soldiers and influential leaders have also targeted us, when you think about it, and Israel's interest. And now we're going to the recent developments and what has come out about it. Starting from April 2024, Iran launched drones and missiles directly at Israel after an Israeli strike killed an Iranian general in Damascus. Now, one would say, did this start everything, or was everything happening, but it wasn't so big on social media? Because when you think about it, for Palestine, for our brothers and sisters in Gaza to be free, and Palestine, the struggle was continuing over the decades. But only now, after this incident, it's everyone's up in arms, and they're questioning it, they're challenging it, they're blaming each other. But again, the struggle was still continuing, and cyber warfare. If you think about it, increased cyber attacks have hit infrastructure, financial systems, and communication networks in both nations. Generally, when you look at places which are war torn, where there's civil wars, and generally when there's conflict in third world countries, in Arab countries, one would never think of drones and cyber warfare. But this is the current situation. This is reality. And also the assassination of Israel's Mossad, is suspected in the death of Iranian nuclear scientist and IRGC commander. And this was something which created more anger. Well, if you look at the international dynamics, 4 key players. That's the United States. Well, the United States has their fingers in everything, and by everyone. So United States, a strong Israeli ally, we all are aware of this. It provides military aid and intelligence. Well, the United States tries to avoid full-scale war in the region. They say that they tend to work behind the scenes, under the scenes, and they're always looking for alibis. But if you tend to follow what's happening, you can see quite crystal clear that United States is responsible and instigators, masterminds of manipulating what's going on. Russia and China, often back Iran politically and economically, especially after the USA sanctions. Now, one would say politics doesn't play a role in all of this, but it does when you think about it, like generally, globally, a lot of activists, individual citizens, the normal man is focusing on humanitarian aid and food, but there's a bigger picture. It's about control, ownership. Arab states. Now, when you look at the Gulf nations, UAE, Saudi, quietly cooperates with Israel against Iran due to share their concerns. Well, normalization efforts, when you think about it, according to others, it widens the Israeli-Arab cooperation axis. But again, it's not really put on social media. And again, when you look at Saudi from the other Arab countries, everyone's a bit hesitant because they're not openly giving their 100% support. And then when you look at Europe presses for, they want to be diplomatic on the nuclear files. They support the two-state solution. But one worries about the Iranian aggression. One says that if Iran loses it, there can be another world war, which might take place. And then the risk, escalation to full-scale war. One would also say there's miscalculation, especially in Lebanon or Syria, could spark a regional war. And again, we go back to nuclear. If Iran goes nuclear, it may trigger an arms race in the Middle East. And this, if you really look at it, the way it's going, it's kind of heading that way. And civilians at risk again, both Israeli and Iranian, so especially in Gaza, have led to large civilians, risking their lives, their homes and everything. Yeah, so that's it. That's about it when you break it down, the analysis.
So just to add to what you're saying, we've got Professor Hussein Vauda who's joined us. He's on the line, but he will be chatting and giving his input briefly. The international response you mentioned, where the US has expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself. I mean, it's abysmal and it's ridiculous for them to say that Donald Trump has demanded that Iran's unconditional surrender. Now, in which way is Israel defending itself when they attacked Iran? And he's then indicating that the US has also relocated aerial refueling tankers to Europe to position them closer to the Middle East. So whether he's the instigator of this particular war that's turning out to be a big problem, and we know there's a lot of implications. I've got Professor Hussein Vauda, who's quite a learned individual on this aspect. Professor, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International. Professor, can you hear us? I think, Professor, you're on mute. If you can just get yourself out of mute, and then we'll have a chat with you. We'll try to get Professor back on the line. Sumaya, just to basically talk about the global concerns, international leaders are calling for restraint, and we know that's coming from many people, and warning that the region teeters into the brink of a broader war, and that could create serious problems. The UN nuclear watchdog has expressed concerns about the impact on nuclear safety. I think we've got Professor back on the line. Professor Hussein, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International. Professor, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor. Professor, I'm interviewing currently Sister Sumaya Khan, and we're chatting about the conflict Iran-Israel. And Sumaya has given us a bit of a background onto why this conflict has taken place and what are the implications. Perhaps you want to just give us some input on your side as to how do you see it, whether it's something that Israel has caused and they're trying to indicate to the world that they're defending themselves. Your comments, Professor.
Yes, okay.
Professor, your line is unclear. We'll have to try to contact you on another line. You've given us another line. While we're trying to... Professor, are you there? Okay, so Professor's line is a bit unclear, so we'll get back to him. So, Maya, just coming back to the humanitarian crisis that this has created, the casualties, Israel strikes have killed at least 585 people in Iran. That's a large number, with many more wounded. Hospitals in western Iran have damaged, and patients have been injured, and falling debris and broken glass as well. The Iranian retaliation is quite intense also. Iran responded with a barrage of missiles at Israel, striking the Galilee region and killing 4 civilians. Israel's defense minister declared Tehran is burning as Israel is hit back with further skies. But there's also reports that Tel Aviv is also in a serious mess. Now, we know that the media does create a bit of hype about all these issues, and we're not sure, who to believe. But I've listened to a clip by the leader of Israel, and he's indicated that now that Israel has instigated this war against Iran, it is the nature of the Iranians that they will respond decisively and ensure that justice prevails, because what the Israelis are doing worldwide with the help of US is unacceptable. Iran was patiently waiting on the side, yet they were concerned about what's happening in Gaza. So he indicated that they will respond decisively. I'm just checking whether we got Professor Hussain back on air. Professor, are you back on air? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Professor, are you back on air?
Yes, I am. It's
okay. Yeah, we just got a bad line to you, but we can hear you quite clearly now. Perhaps you want to just give your comments on the Iran-Israel conflict. Exactly. What's your take in that? Go for it, Professor.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chakur, thank you for inviting me and be the host of the New Focus to share some thoughts. One of the gravest humanitarian crises of our time.
Correct.
The situation in Gaza is highlighting the broader Palestinian suffering and genocide complaint based on case lodged by the South Africa at the ICJ. And since the 13th of June this year, further complicated by Israel attacking Iran unprovoked and in gross violation of international rules of engagement. I will elaborate with the permissible time on the Palestinian situation, especially in the light of devastating Gaza-Israel war that erupted on the 7th of 2023. The Gaza-Israel war is a significant and sensitive issue, and I will talk about it in a respectful, informative, and balanced radio talk show for New Focus. Remember, listeners, this is not simply a political or geopolitical issue. Is it, at its core, a human issue? And as a South African, we have witnessed our long nation's road from oppression to democracy. I speak as a peace propagator from the heart and the truth. The brutal war is deeply emotional and a polarizing topic, one that touches on identity, history, justice, trauma, and above all, humanity. Respected listeners of this focus, I, as a humble peace propagator from Durban, I invite you to a journey with me through the latest development in the Palestine-Israel war, now expanded into Iran in the conflict, and unfolding human crisis in Gaza, both of which cry out not only for attention, but for action, wisdom, and above all, for peace. Since June 13, 2025, or last Friday, tension between Israel have escalated dangerously, and Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, targeting more than 100 sites across Iran, nuclear facility, military bases, and missile storage depot. Iran responded with Operation Truth Trouble 3, unleashing 150 missiles, 100 drones towards Israel, Haifa, and beyond. At the receiving end, the death toll is mounting. Civilians, children, mothers, journalists, students, again are caught in the crossfire. Both parties in the major country, in the major cities, are reeling from fear and loss of life. Global powers are positioning like vultures on the sidelines with the true national power. The United Nations has redirected its aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean. Britain's Royal Air Force stands high alert. Germany has detected parliamentarians for wearing attire identifying with Palestinians, and we as indifferent and unconcerned South Africans supporting this country as the regional war looms. Meanwhile, call for restraint from the United Nations, European Union, China, Turkey, across diplomatic sphere. But is anybody listening? No. President Donald Trump has stated today that U.S. has total control and complete control of the skies over Iran. He has diverted the fleets of warships from South China Sea towards Iran and B-2 stealth bombers, which has a range of 960 kilometers without refueling to its Middle East allies in the Arab country. Each of these doomsday planes carry 2,400 kilograms bombs or bunker busters ready for deployment on Iran. International strategists are of the opinion that Israel is formed for this hypersonic bomber. Therefore, US is directly complicit in the war and it aims to do what they did in Iraq, in Syria, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and used two Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, on the 6th and 9th of August, respectively, in the past decade without any remorse. He wants Iran's total unconditional surrender in the war which was started and followed by Israel. The Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, is rightly defending Iran against collective colonial oppression and ethnophobia on the basis of Iran nuclear armament, which have been discussed for the last 30 years, as reiterated repeatedly by the leader of Israel. Protest for Israel, a world response. Why this is why millions across the world literally protest, not just against the war, but peace with justice. It is interesting to note, listeners, in The Hague, over 150,000 protesters formed a red line march past the Peace Palace, demanding and the complicity of the United States, Britain, and Germany in Gaza's destruction. Then we have the global march to Gaza, intended to convert peacefully, and Rafah, 4,000 from 80 countries marched through Egypt and Libya. Many were blocked or severely beaten, yet their resolve has been strengthened. Also note this: in Israel itself, Jewish and Arab countries have taken to the streets calling for ceasefire and hostage return, risking arrest by IDF in the process. Here in South Africa, people of conscience have joined hands from Cape Town to Durban to Johannesburg. Solidarity marches, prayer vigil, and interfaith rally. One message made clear: Gaza lives no matter what. Gaza lives matter, and peace must prevail. It isn't a global outrage. It is a human impotence made visible. And Mr. Thakur, if I may, just recollect our Quranic and South African vision for peace. The Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah states, fight in the way of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress. Indeed, Allah does not like transgression. In Surah Al-Anfal, they incline toward peace, they incline toward it also, and trust in Allah. These verses remind us that justice must not become vengeance, and peace is always preferable for that if we are sincere. Our dear South African, one chapter by apartheid knows the strength of principle, resistance, and the dignity of reconciliation. Our late leader, Madiba said, and I'll remind all of you listeners, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. Can we now allow another nation to suffer dispossession, siege, ongoing genocide while we look other way? We, as South Africans, with our own painful history of apartheid, have drawn parallels to Palestinian experience. Our government has taken a firm diplomatic stance, including support for the case against Israel at the International Criminal Court. While legal debate continues, the moral call is clear. Civilian lives must be protected, accountability must be pursued, and the 7-decade-long occupation of the aggressor Israel must end. Remember, just as in the apartheid, the Israeli informers in our institution, they right in the middle in South Africa, in religious bodies, large businesses, beware of them and safeguard their interests, not humanity. In closing, to you listeners of New Critical Focus, this is not just a Middle Eastern issue. It is a human issue. When people live without freedom, security, or hope, the world is diminished. Let us not allow history to repeat ourselves by turning ourselves in silence, the silence of the pulpit, and as a peace negotiator and propagator and a South African, I feel morally obliged and compelled to say something. Silence in the face of suffering is complicity. I believe in a future where justice and peace are shared. May we, as South Africans, stand strong and speak with empathy, act in courage, and who dare to imagine a future where Israelis and Palestinians live not in fear, but in peace and peace. The question often is asked, is peace possible? Certainly, but only with justice, dignity, truth, and without foreign interference and partnership. Many Jews and Muslims throughout the world want peace, not domination. We as Muslims must be guided by the religious teaching of all Abrahamic faiths. Must amplify those voices. What can ordinary South Africans do? The answer is a wide challenge, but speak out in support of humanitarian causes. Build interfaith universities. Forget your sectarian differences between Shia and Sunni Muslims, as some religious leaders are propagating. It is not our war. We are all members of the human race. We are not a separate We should support the South African government who had the guts, the temerity to launch the ICC case of genocide against Israel and continue to support Iran and Israel and Palestinians and hold government accountable to international law. Remember, business that you give to Britain, Germany, to Americans, 2 Palestinians are killed by you supporting their businesses and their products from the company from their company. Oh, great Madiban said, and I say it again, no freedom is incomplete without freedom of Palestine. Beloved listeners, it is not a time for silence. It is a time for solidarity in action. We must call on side to end civilian targeting. They are mercilessly killed while waiting for food and walking down death corridors to be shot by the Israeli rockets as practice target. Open humanitarian corridor to Gaza. Resume honest diplomacy and hold violators of international law accountable. Again, I reiterate that every land you spend on British companies, German companies, US, and even Saudi is eventually killing 2 Palestinians waiting for food aid presently. Let us echo the prayers of Prophet Musa, may peace be upon him. Oh my Lord, expand my breast for me, ease my task, and untie the knot from my tongue so that they may understand my speech. Surah Taha. Tonight, may your heart be moved, oh listeners, and oh August gathering in the studio, a live audience. I could not attend, and I am doing it from home, and may your voices be empowered. I am just a servant of peace, and may we each become builders of peace in word and in deed. With peace, shalom, and go well, my friend. Thank you, Mr. Sasood, for giving me the third time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them based on my extensive study of the Palestinian suffering over the last 40 or 50 years. Thank you.
Professor Hussain Wada, some very pertinent comments on the Israel-Gaza-Iran conflict. We thank you for joining us this evening and sharing your expert knowledge and research in the subject. I know that you spent 10 months in hospital with a freak illness and you were on the respirator for a considerable period of time with a pulmonary problem. And our listeners will appreciate the fact that you came on air and sincerely articulated your comments and views, which were so important. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you complete shifa from your illness. And however you expressed yourself this evening, we at Radio Al Ansar International and our listeners appreciate the input you've given us, Professor. We will interview you in the future, but we make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you complete shifa. And as a civic and human rights and political activist, you continue with the good work. We know that, and the listeners all know, you're a retired professor in medicine, having spent a considerable period in your life serving the people of this world on the medical fraternity. Now you're concerned about the political and humanitarian issues in Palestine. We thank you for joining us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you healthy and fit to continue with your good work. Professor, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, Ameen, Jazakallah, and blessings for you and your listeners and the studio audience. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Professor Hussain Wada. We apologized for the disruption and the unclear. Professor has recovered from being on a respirator for 10 months. He notified me. He was a regular guest in my show that he sent me a message. He's just recovered. And obviously, he's not as articulate as he was when he was a lecturer, but he got the message through. Sumaya, I want you to comment. He spoke about some pertinent issues, those listeners that were listening carefully, and we must apologize because Professor, in the sick condition, spoke from his heart, and he made some pertinent comments on our role. Now, it comes in a hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. When oppression takes place, that there's one of three things we can do. Firstly, we must stop it physically. If we can't, that is the highest form of iman. Then we should talk about it, have protest marches, do something about it. And the third, the least we can do is make duas. Now, you obviously had a program on Sunday and you spoke about the protest marches. How important are the contributions of people worldwide, including South Africans, towards creating the awareness of the atrocities that are taking place? And we know the kind of atrocities that are taking place in Gaza. And now people are moving very, very conveniently the sharp focus away from the humanitarian side. People are starving, people are getting massacred, women and children are being killed. Those that are going for humanitarian aid are being shot at and killed. And you have a child carrying the father's body and saying, what do I do? I'm all alone. Perhaps you just want to give a brief comment before the news break.
Professor touched, as you can say, he's ill, he's recovering. He touched from a human point of view, where put everything away, think of the Abrahamic faith, whether you're a Christian, Jew, or Muslim, and think about your fellow human brothers and sisters, because it's the worst thing ever, most painful, vile, ugly, cruel thing when you are slaughtering brothers and sisters, mothers, babies, and it's an ongoing thing, and there is no help, assistance from any one of our global leaders. And as we said, it has shifted now more into political, onto nuclear warfare, onto other issues, onto other countries. But first and foremost, his thing is we need to look at it from a humanitarian point of view. And the basic necessities, that's food, that's shelter, that's oxygen, that's air, that's just existing. And our brothers and sisters in Gaza are finding it so difficult to exist. And as you just mentioned, it's an everyday thing where when you think about it, when we first started looking on our social media, on videos, on pictures of decapitated bodies, of limbs, we couldn't look at our phone. If you think about it, even on groups, people were fighting and arguing, how can you post this? I'm blocking you from this group. But that is a reality now. Have we, as citizens, or people from another continent or from another country, have we become so immune to this? It's like, oh yeah, whatever, and we're continuing with our lives. So his thing is, and this is 100% true, we need to continue, remember our brothers and sisters, not only in Gaza, around the world, because the suffering is real, and it shouldn't exist, especially in today's times. But again, it's still there, and everyone is trying their best. When you think about it, demands on the humanitarian corridor to end the Israeli blockage, and the pressure on global institutions to halt the genocidal war in Gaza is still continuing. We haven't reached anywhere. What is it? Almost 2 years, and all the organizers of everything, whether they're activists, political leaders, members of different embassies, parliament, individuals who are so passionate, still remain strictly non-violent, and they are still mobilizing the peace protest. And that is quite amazing, because no one has started, the man on the ground, they haven't yet started fighting and rebelling against it. They just want, peace. For listeners out there, United for Palestine are doing a hell of a lot on the ground. When you think about it, for almost 30 years, our president, brother Abdul Valodia, he has dedicated almost 30 years into the struggle. And our group is really, really active. And you can follow it, United for Palestine. We have our own channel, and they are close to like almost 3,500, going on to 4,000, where we are getting immediate update of what's happening currently. And we as South Africans, we need to be active. And you were mentioning something about what is our duty. Well, foremost, when you think about it, it's not a religious, besides us being Muslims and being our religious duty to stand for what is correct, to stand for our haq. We as Muslims, if we keep quiet, we are just like the oppressors. So you rather stand up. No one's telling you to take a gun and shoot someone, but stand up for what you believe by protesting, by making dua, and making the next brother and sister, regardless of their race, their religion, making them aware of what is happening in Gaza and around the world. And by that, you're creating knowledge and awareness. And eventually, inshallah, with time, there will be immense pressure to stop this and to halt this, and for our leaders around the world to sit together peacefully and, try to get rid of what's going on.
No, Sumaya, I just want to close our discussion before the news break. I know we're over our time. This conflict between Iran and Israel, which has now taken center stage, is in its sixth day, with both sides vowing to continue their attacks. Now, Iran's supreme leader warned Israel that Tehran will harshly retaliate against Israel's attack, saying, "We will show the Zionists no mercy."
Yeah.
Prof mentioned there's no time for the difference between Shias and Sunnis, etc. It is basically a war to fight the oppressors and for justice to prevail. Now, in terms of those protest marches that you spoke about that have been taking place, particularly the one that was stopped by Egypt, being a Muslim country, there's a group of a couple of thousand people, many from South Africa. We'll interview Maulana Ali shortly.
Yeah.
Went out and they were halted by Egypt, being complicit with Israel. Yet they had a long-standing war against Israel, and now they're becoming like, no-showers, and they're stopping all these protest marches that are taking place. And the end result is that the Palestinians are dying of starvation because there are thousands of trucks with humanitarian aid are prevented to cross the Gaza border or the Rafah border and to get aid to the people. And when people are going for aid that the US and Israelis are providing, they're making them be like dogs, chasing after bones, etc. Now, in terms of the flotilla, just briefly, for 2 minutes before we cross for the news, that was also stopped. And there's also indications that other countries are going to send aid. Now, Israel on the one side is concentrating on the genocide in Gaza. On the other side, they're attacking Israel. They're threatening to attack Pakistan. And people are saying Israel is trying to be the superpower of the world, aided by US. Now, we know, and I want you to conclude on this, Sumaya, that we have a powerful weapon as Muslims. That is our du'as. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of the entire world. And if Allah says kun, He can bring any nation down to the ground. And in terms of the action that Allah took against Pharaoh when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was being chased towards the Red Sea, and there was nowhere for him to go with his followers. And Allah opened up pathways for him to cross and drown Pharaoh. So that time is not very far off, where if we are sincere as Muslims, we do what we can physically, as you mentioned, and engage in these protest marches, send aid to Palestine, and support the fight against oppression. At least we will be doing our little bit here, and in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever is within our means, we can do. Your closing comments on that, Sumaya?
Well, it's absolutely important. Again, we as South Africans and South African Muslims, or just a human being, we coming from, everyone goes on about this, but we are coming from a background from apartheid. We lived through it. We know what we went through. The struggle continues. So we need to stand so firmly. And when you think about it, South Africa, our previous governments, Nelson Mandela, we all of us had allegiance with Palestine. And, we always said we are only free if Palestine is free. So we need to stand. We need to do whatever we have to do. One would say this doesn't concern us. It's another country. You have these comments. If you are talking with your colleagues at work or anyone, it's shocking that people, educated people, influential people belonging to professions will still say, "Oh, it doesn't concern us. It's not in our country. Oh, well, everything is from Israel." But they don't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture. This is a human being. It's not a robot. It's not a man-made something. It's something real. Where when you see people are just being killed, slaughtered, and none of us can do anything. So we need to instill this. June 16 just went by, Youth Day. Our young adults, our future leaders of South Africa, we need to get them involved, to be active. It starts from home. It starts right here. It starts with your neighbor. Where become active. You talk a lot about the Ratepayers Association, and I mentioned this before. I think one of your guests, brother Abdul Valodia, who's also the president for UFP, he mentioned, why start big and feel you can't do it? Start with your neighbor. Start something basic like, sort out the garbage on the road, see to the elderly. So it starts small. And we as a nation, we should feel so empowered. They say himmat, strength, that we are South Africans and we are the movers of this. And for us just to go there and represent the ICJ, that's like a hell of a lot. It's brown. I wouldn't say brownie points, but we can do it. We can make a difference, because right now, people around the world, political leaders, activists, everyone wants to be part of the South African convoy. And alhamdulillah, when you think about it, regardless what, we had South African activists who went there to the border of Rafah, even though we knew 70% it's impossible for us to cross over. But they took the time to be there. I mean, knowing that we don't know what can happen while we are protesting there, while we are there. It wasn't 100% safe, but we went there and we did our bit. And we should continue doing our bit, as teachers, as educators, as community leaders, as members of different organizations. We need to encourage our people to stand up for what is right. Because generally what happens is when you speak up and when you stand for the truth, you stand alone. And when you think about it, I mean, I'm saying the way it is, corruption is out there, especially in our country with everything. I knew some of our guests will probably know, they're on the political front here in SA. We need to stand up for what's right. And if we all of us mobilize and stand up together, inshallah, with one vision and mission as a human being, as a citizen, we can overcome so many obstacles, and we can put an end or prevent or lessen the ills of society and become a better nation, not only nationally, but also internationally. And it might not make change now, but inshallah, maybe, when you work towards something, it could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. And that is the whole idea of being an activist.
Sumaya Khan, shukran for joining us. As an educator, you wore your political activist, civic activist cap this evening, shared some very valuable information with us. I know it's a cold day, and you normally have your program, School Matters on a Tuesday, and it's unusual for you to leave home and come to the studio at 9 o'clock. But I think you shared some very valuable information with our listeners today. We thank you for joining us. As the chairperson of United for Palestine, where you are sort of quite significantly involved on the Palestinian issue, now with the Iran issue, we thank you for joining us and contributing to the effort to fight oppression. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the help to continue with this, because it's such an important, and a young lady, standing up and doing this type of work. It's a message to our others out there. And I know there's a lot of young activists that are doing this work. So we thank you for joining us. We wish you everything of the best. And inshallah, we'll have you in future programs talking about such issues and giving us update.
Yeah.
Right.
Jazakallah, this is not just a protest. It's, a message of unwavering support for Gaza and its people. So we all of us just got to say no to displacement of Palestinian people and, no to liquidation of the Palestinian cause. And, so we all of us just need to try to do our best for humanity. And inshallah, this world is not forever. We still got to answer to the Almighty, and just doing good, being good. That's sawab, and that's blessings on its own. So once again, Jazakallah for having me on News in Focus.